Welcome to We Are Human Leaders. When you're here with us, you're part of the movement driving change. Each conversation is an invitation to grow, to question, and to co-create a future where people, business, and society flourish together. And we, Alexis and Sally, are here to guide you on this journey, connecting you to big ideas, bold conversations, and brave questions that will help you live and lead more human every day. Lex, this is another amazing conversation with Muriel Wilkins. What did you love most today?
It was a powerful reminder that to see organizations and indeed a world where people can thrive, the work really begins with us. So for me, that was the key takeaway from today's conversation on blockers. And a reminder also that that journey is ongoing. How about you, Sal?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really shedding light on the invisible things that hold us back. And Muriel is so articulate and so wise and does such a great job of sort of live in our conversation, unpacking some of our own deeper beliefs that limit our own leadership as well. So it's super insightful. Muriel is founder and CEO of Paraverse Partners. She's a C-suite advisor and executive coach with a 20-year track record of helping senior leaders take their performance to the next level. And she is author of the brilliant new Leadership Unblocked, Breakthrough the Beliefs That Limit Your Potential. She's also the host of the Harvard Business Review podcast, Coaching Real Leaders. This is a really almost a kind of a coaching session, I think, for you listening as well.
Absolutely, Sal. And it was such a fun one to put ourselves up as the guinea pigs in this conversation. So this podcast episode is all about unblocking your leadership with Muriel Wilkins. We can't wait for you to hear it. Now let's dive in.
Thank you so much for being with us, Muriel. Welcome to We Are Human Leaders. We're really excited for this conversation with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
We'd love to get started. We're going to delve deep into your amazing new book, but I'd love to start with the simple question of what it means to be blocked as a leader and how that harms our leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've all had a feeling at some point or another, whether it's in leadership or outside of leadership, quite frankly, even in life, of feeling blocked, feeling stuck, feeling like we're not getting the outcomes that we actually desire in our role or with our team or in our career, whatever it might be, even in our communication. And that feeling of being blocked actually shows up differently for different people, right? But one of the things is understanding, like, how do I know that I'm blocked? Sometimes you need that external kind of input to let you know that you're blocked, but really understanding for yourself, something is off. So that's what I mean when somebody's blocked. But what I am have been really curious about is what leads to a person being blocked. And oftentimes, what we tend to do is look at the behaviors, what the person is doing, what that leader is doing or not doing. And I became really curious over some time, recognizing that it actually goes beyond the behaviors. It's about the beliefs that drive those behaviors, and how are those beliefs either helping you or actually getting in the way, and therefore keeping you in this blocked state that I just expressed.
I love that you're going deep there, Muriel, that is not these kind of superficial, almost after the fact symptoms perhaps of these beliefs, but it's going to almost the root cause, as it were. Am I understanding that framing correctly?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because part of what happened, Sally, is I've worked with leaders for a long time. I've been doing executive coaching for over 20 years. And you know, basically I was a very action oriented coach with my clients where we were looking directly at like, okay, what do you do? Right? Let's come up with the three things, the four things. And they would go and do them, but it wouldn't be sustainable. And as a coach, I really wanted the work to be sustainable, that it would last. And as I started studying a lot more and learning a lot more about human behavior, really around what drove behavior, I started to understand more around the beliefs, the narratives, the stories that we tell ourselves, the operating system that then leads to those behaviors. But what I found is that while a lot of that language was in, parenting, books and relationship books and all the life books, not much of this is spoken about in the workplace around the assumptions that we bring into work and how they then impact how we work and ultimately, for me, how we lead.
That's really
important point to make, Muriel, because I think for a long time we've expected that who we are at work and who we are at home don't intersect. And we've always been told to leave that at the door. So
Mhm.
it's a very powerful way of framing this idea that we are a whole person all of the time. And in fact, these blockages that we maybe have developed over a period of time, be it personal or through our career, actually do impact the way we work. Now, your book really beautifully looks at 7 of these different blockers.
Mhm.
I'd love it if we could. Can we double click on this for a minute? Can you help us explore what are these 7 different blockers? And
Sure.
we'd love to know from you, Muriel, have you experienced any of these yourself in
Oh my
your career
gosh.
as well?
Where do we begin?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, let me take a step back. So when I talk about the blockers, it's literally the belief or the mantra that you tell yourself. There are these, if you think about sometimes, right, if you sit back and think about what is a repetitive thing that I tend to have an inner dialogue, something that just keeps coming up in my head, that sometimes I'm not even conscious of, which is what I find with a lot of people. And it's not to say that the 7 that I'm about to mention are the only ones. They're the ones that bubbled up to the top. When I looked across 300 clients, I noticed that there was a pattern, and there were these 7 that tended to be the most popular ones that came up for individuals. But certainly there can be others. So the 7 that came up were I need to be involved. I can't make a mistake.
Mm,
I know I'm right. If I can do it, so can you. That's one of my favorites. It was the big surprise. I need it done now. I can't say no, and I don't belong here. And they are so simple, just these short little statements, but they're these quiet voices that actually have such a loud impact in the way that individuals lead, right? And
yeah.
so what I saw is that these little mantras could actually then have quite a ripple effect, not just in terms of the leader's behavior, but also how other people were experiencing that leadership.
Muriel, what I find most fascinating about the 7 blockers in your book is that as someone who's experienced probably all 7 at different points in my career, I would say the impact for me on my leadership is that they force me into almost like this fear-based scarcity type of leadership. I feel so for me, the one that came up the most was I need to be involved, but also
Mm,
there were a few others like I know I'm right and these kinds of things. And what to me they really highlighted was that they drive leadership behavior in a really negative way.
mhm.
Now,
Yeah.
I'd love to know, can you help us unpack some of these a little further? Maybe we can start with mine. I need to be involved. What are some of the negative repercussions that you see leaders who maybe experience this blocker behaving like? And what might someone like me who leads with that lens do to sort of
Yeah.
calm that barrier a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Alexis. And by the way, that was one of the ones that I experienced. In fact, like you, I
Yeah.
experienced all of these at some point or another. Writing this book was actually really cathartic
No doubt.
because, I would get to the next chapter and then by the end I'd be like, damn it, I have this one too.
Yeah.
You know?
And I suspect a lot of leaders have experienced one or all of them at
Right,
different scenarios,
exactly.
right?
And
Yeah.
what's interesting about that actually is it's not that these beliefs and these are always blockers, right? It's not that they are bad. It's just that they don't always support you, and it's recognizing when they do support you and when they don't, rather than having them on all the time. So if we look at the I need to be involved, clearly, for example, Alexis, if you were, when you were early in your career and maybe you had like a very discreet job. I know for me, my first job out of college was, I'm going to date myself here, but it was responsible for direct mail, right? And I was responsible for the message that was printed on the insurance bill that these insurance holders would receive. That is all I was responsible for. So did I need to be really, really involved in making sure that every letter, every spacing, every little thing was correct? Absolutely. Belief served me extremely well in that capacity. But as I scaled in my leadership, and this is where I see to your question around where does it get in the way, it particularly gets in the way when leaders have to scale, when they start managing others or they start managing those who manage. The scalability of a leader, where quite frankly, they don't have the sheer physical capacity to be involved in everything that they want to or that they feel a need to be involved in. And so that is probably the biggest barrier. They are often the ones who are called micromanagers because literally they want to be CC'd on everything. They want to be in every meeting. They want to make sure that they weigh in on everything. Nothing can happen without them being involved because of this need.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about it is what drives the need. And as you said, a lot of it is fear based. And for those who hold the belief, I need to be involved, there is, when you really sort of start scratching on that belief, there's an underlying belief that they will not be safe if they're not involved. Okay, so it comes down to this human value that we have around safety that basically all hell will break loose if they're not involved. So therefore, they're going to be involved. Okay, so yes.
I think it's such an important point to underscore, Muriel, because my and I too have experienced all seven, but particularly I can't make a mistake, which
Mm,
served me really well as a junior lawyer, but not so much sort of, as you mentioned, sort of when you're starting to shift into different roles and managing people.
mhm.
But I think when we really understand that it's not just it can manifest in this kind of controlling behavior, but what's driving it is really this deep fear, and it can be quite intense, almost a
Mhm.
sort of a terror that's kind of underpinning that. And I think it's that sort of deeper work and understanding that root cause is so important for us, rather than just
Yeah.
blaming what seems to be happening in the moment.
That's right. That's right. And the what's really important here, Sally and Alexis, is that even as uncovering what is underlying the belief, that's going to be different individual to individual, right?
Mhm.
So even the I can't make a mistake one, yes, one of it can be around control. The other piece of it is where I see folks who have that belief is that it doesn't necessarily to control. They actually are quite the opposite. They're trying to get everybody involved, consensus. They don't want conflict to happen because if it creates a mistake, then they're concerned they're not going to be accepted by the group, right? So it's grounded in something very different. But both show but then there can be something else that drives it. So understanding your story and the origin of it, which is kind of the unpacking of the belief, is quite critical because it's not universal for everyone.
And I love this in the book, Muriel, because you do sort of move us through this beautiful process of uncovering
Mhm.
the blocker, then unpacking, and finally unblocking.
Mhm.
Can you perhaps walk us through what that looks like? And feel free to use either of us as guinea pigs or a more
Sure.
general example.
Well, maybe we'll go back to the I need to be involved with Alexis. How about that? Are you good with that, Alexis?
I am more than happy to be the guinea pig.
Okay. Well, you've already uncovered it, right? Which is really the
Mm,
first step. The first step is awareness. And it's even recognizing, even before you get to the belief, it's recognizing that you are blocked, right?
yeah.
That something is off. And again, there's two ways of knowing that. One of it is internal. You have enough of a sense of knowing when something is off, right? You just feel it in your bones and for me, I always feel it in my chest, like, something's not right, or I'm just going over something over and over and over again. And that's a telltale sign that something doesn't feel right. I might not quite know what it is. For a lot of times, people who lack self awareness, there's an external input. This is where we get
Mm.
feedback, we get 360 input. So let me start with that. Alexis, how did you even recognize that maybe there are times when something is off that then led to the uncovering of the belief that I need to be involved?
I think for me, I started really recognizing, and it came up in my very first leadership role where I felt
Mm,
really overwhelmed all of the time.
mhm,
Because I needed to be involved in everything, I started to just feel like I was drowning. I could not keep up. I knew it wasn't sustainable, but I did not know sort of how to let go. So for me, it was just
mhm.
this feeling of, oh my goodness, I'm drowning and I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah. And so what's really key here and what a lot of people do is what you said, Alexis, is I don't know what to do. We automatically
Mm,
go from this doesn't feel right to what do I do? You know, it's and I love that you use the term drowning. Not that I would want anyone to drown, but when you think about, I don't know if you've ever experienced being in a pool where, or in ocean water where you feel like you're about to go under. You
Yeah.
can tell those who've sort of taken the survival classes and those who haven't, right? I mean, I remember the first time I experienced that, my arms went, what do I do? What do I do? Let me stop. And then, somebody who was with me was like, don't panic, breathe.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Think about what you need to do. Think about what's happening. Assess the situation first before you move to action. So, in that first step of the uncover stage, it's becoming aware and then starting to name what is the belief. So, it literally starts with a very simple question. Here's the behavior that I'm having. What is the belief that is driving it? Right. And you name it. And in your case, you named it as I need to be involved. Then you can move on to step number two, which is the unpacking. And the unpacking is about understanding this belief. Again, we tend to move straight to action rather than trying to understand. I think about it very analogous to going to the doctor. If you go to the doctor and you're like, doctor, I'm not feeling well, I have a bruise on my arm hurts. And they just go, oh, let's just put a band-aid on it. Right? Let's just wrap it up. But they never say, well, let's try to figure out what's leading to the bruising or what's leading to the pain. 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up right back at the doctor, right? Because you haven't really figured out what's happening. And because you haven't figured out what's happening, you haven't really been able to administer the right action to take against that. So, in this second phase of unpacking, it is about understanding what is driving that belief. Where did it come from? And it's also so that you can recognize it in the future. So for you, Alexis, when you think about the I need to be involved, where do you think that came from for you?
I've done quite a bit of work, fortunately, Muriel, to help uncover this. But for me, it really came from if I'm not involved, they don't need me. So I'm not needed here. So as a young leader in particular, it was just a quest for relevance. I needed to prove my worth, my competence, my relevance. And that felt like having a finger in every pie to make sure that I was proving that I had any kind of relevance to the team.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for sharing that, Alexis, because underlying each of these beliefs are actually just some fundamental human needs, right? The need to feel worthy, the need to feel safe, the need to feel like we are part of a collective because that was survival, right? And so understanding that that's where it comes from, but then pulling it forward to say, okay, is this the way that I fulfill that need today in the same way that I did in the past? Right. Is part of the unpacking, not so that you can shame yourself or anything like that, more so that you can befriend it and actually say, oh my gosh, yeah, I see why this was helpful.
Yeah.
And it might not be helpful for me now. Right. So then you can move on to the third phase. And the third phase is unblocking from the belief. And this is where the magic happens, right? This is where we're getting really close to action. It's when you say, okay, so that belief I need to be involved isn't serving me. What belief would serve me in this situation that will allow me to not feel as overwhelmed as the way that I feel right now, in your case, Alexis, right? And so when you reframe from reframing, then you can move to action. So in your case, what do you think you could reframe the belief to so that you then don't feel like you're drowning? You feel like you're on top of things rather than being overwhelmed by them.
Oh, it's such a good question. And I think for me, maybe there were a few sort of things that came out of that. The first one was that I can let go.
Hmm.
And not of everything, but just this need to kind of like claw and this feeling. And Sally so eloquently describes this often when we do sessions. It's like this releasing of like the talons being so dug in deeply to everything, to feeling like I can let go a little bit and create some space to maybe reprioritize or whatever it might be. So I think for me, the really deep underlying was I can let go a little bit.
Yeah. May I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
How do you define your relevance now?
My goodness. That's a really tough one because I still am so, I think, achievement driven as well. And I still get a lot of relevance from my contributions.
Hmm.
I would say specifically in a workplace setting, my relevance now comes from our team contribution to the outcomes that we can help achieve for some of our clients. So that's specifically in a workplace setting. I think in my personal life, I can step back and still feel relevant without necessarily having to achieve
Mhm.
those things. But for me, that's how I sort of feel relevant within the career realm.
Okay. So that's really important because you sort of tied this initial belief to relevance, right? And that need doesn't
Mm,
go away, right? I mean, you're a
no.
human. But the question is the formula still the same? And what I heard you just now do is sort of change the definition of how you contribute. And so if the new definition of contribution is not as long as I have my talents and everything, then I am worthy,
Yeah.
right? But the new definition is if I can optimize the contributions of my team to the client, that is relevance. That's how I'm defining success. Then what is the belief that would be aligned with that?
Mm. I think the belief aligned with that is, oh gosh, this is really tough on the spot. I think it's around being of service to others helps me feel relevant, but
Mhm,
less in a desperately needing to prove that from a sense of self-worth kind of way, if that makes sense.
mhm,
Like when I can help people in the world, I think is a nice way to be relevant.
mhm. Yeah. And so perhaps it's not the I need to be involved, I need to be involved in everything, but it's I need to be involved in certain things that actually help my team.
Yeah,
Which then
yeah,
narrows down. I mean, you can look at then we can move to action. You can look at your to-do list and say, how much of what I'm doing is reflective of me
yeah.
being of service to my team so that then they can optimize the way that they contribute rather than this blanket, I need to be involved in everything.
Yeah, that's even right now, that's such a powerful reframe and reminder for me that there's still
Mm.
more work to be done in this. Because I'm sure, as Sally could probably attest, who has to work with me the most, there's still probably times when I've got talons firmly gripped in things. Sal, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Yeah.
Oh, look, every now and then, and I think it's really helpful actually, Muriel, reading your book and
Yeah,
then having this discussion even now, because I think it also gives us some language around, I can perhaps then reflect back to Lex if I'm feeling like, okay,
you're
is this
gripping.
the need? Yeah, is this the talent need to be involved and to be able to have that language around, providing that feedback in a helpful way. Because I think once we've started to explore this work in a really meaningful way, it's not going to be a one and done, right? We're not going to sort of flick a switch and suddenly be, not subject to that belief from time to time, particularly if it's a very deeply held, sort of long standing belief. But being able to support each other through evolving in that process. I
Absolutely.
will say, like, Lex is amazing and very self-aware to work with, so she's got a pretty high baseline there.
I'm glad you said that because the goal is not to get rid of the beliefs. That's not the goal at all. The goal is to become curious enough and mindful enough that you can question whether the belief or the assumption, whatever you want to call it, is actually serving you in this particular situation that you're in. Because again, if you operate with the assumption that's actually aligned with the outcome that you want to have, which in your case is to optimize the team's contributions, boy, is that path a little easier to take, right? And so that's why the beliefs that are not aligned end up being blockers. They just slow you down. It's like having your parking brake on and trying to drive. You're going to move, you know, but you're going to be struggling moving. And that's
Yeah.
when we start feeling overwhelmed. So you're getting work done, right? I'm sure the team is still contributing, but you're just experiencing with a lot more difficulty than you need to.
I just want to pause quickly on something you said there, Muriel, because
Mm,
it just rang so true for me. And that is this idea of working but with the handbrake on, because for me it felt like there was this constant resistance and I'm like, gosh, why is everything so hard to get done? Why are there so many bottlenecks in the team? Why is work taking so long to
mhm,
reach fruition, without
mhm,
realizing that, oh, I'm literally the bottleneck.
Yeah.
That is all me.
or part of you, right? Like, let's give a little
I am
credit. But like,
damming
yeah,
the
a lot
river.
of times that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And resistance, and I didn't make this up. I mean, this comes from like schools of wisdom way beyond me, right? Like resistance is the path of suffering, and so that's why even in that middle step, right, when you are unpacking the belief, the reason why you want to kind of cozy up with the belief is so that you can accept it. You can just understand it and you accept it and you're like, yep, it's there. And when you can accept something, it doesn't mean that you go into passivity, but you can see it for what it is. Oh my gosh, here I am again in this. I need to be involved. It comes from a place of wanting to feel relevant. Why do I want to feel relevant right now? Is that how I should be defining relevant? Okay, thank you very much. But now I got to pick up another belief for this situation. But if you resist that, yeah, it's going to be parking brake on.
And I think that's something that I have spent many years doing, Muriel, is really resisting that. And maybe it's because I can't make a mistake. And then I realized that that was a mistake. And so then I judged myself. It's like the second arrow in Buddhism. It's like I was experiencing suffering and then I was judging and blaming myself for the suffering. And I think being able to bring a gentle and loving and compassionate voice to those beliefs and understanding that at their root, they're trying to keep us safe. They're trying to keep,
That's right.
take care of those basic human needs is such an important reframe. But it also sometimes feels it's hard because we're so used to being quite self-critical and driven and wanting to really
Yeah.
achieve amazing things. And it can feel a little counterintuitive to sort of be
Yeah.
gentle with that part that also seems like it's undermining us.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's hard about it is that you're unlearning how you need it to be, right? And if you even think, I'm like one of the least woo-woo people out there, but to be honest, when you look at leadership and when I looked at like the feedback that the leaders that I coached would get, what I started to realize, it took me a long time to realize this, is like, oh, what people really want is for this person to mature. They want them to actually start adulting as a leader. And so when we think about adult development theory, which is basically around, when you develop as an adult, which not all people do, and it is not tied to chronology, it really is about your ability to have the mindset to deal with more complex situations. Well, then what does that need? What it requires is you to have a more expansive mindset because you can hold different beliefs all at one time. You can hold the both and or the triple and or the quadruple and, right? And so this is what the work is. But in order to do that, you have to take the one that you've been holding on to for, oh goodness, so long and say, okay, you've done me good, but you're not the only one. It's like saying, oh my gosh, yes, you're my only child, my favorite child. But guess what? You're actually not my only child. I have like 10 others who I love just as much. And let's, let them into the room as well. So it can be the challenge is that we are letting go of habits. We're not making it habitual anymore. We're moving from habitual thinking to conscious thinking. And conscious thinking is about choice. It's about saying, I can choose what assumptions I bring into this particular situation. And if I can choose assumptions that are aligned with my actions, again, it will be the path of least resistance. But if I don't choose, I'm giving it up to, chance whether I'm going to end up with a path that works well for me.
Muriel, for a leader wanting to do this work, you mentioned something earlier that really rung true for me as well. And that is oftentimes we might be fortunate enough to uncover this pattern. Certainly in my life, I want to take the quickest road forward. So for me, jumping straight to action, when I kind of went down this path for the first time, felt like the fastest way to resolve this issue. And it really felt uncomfortable for me to go through the real deep work of the unpacking phase. It felt like I could just skim over that and get to the what now part of it. What might we stand to risk if we don't actually do that deeper work of unpacking it and we try and skim straight through to action?
Yeah, I mean, the risk is actually, I mean, this is what I tell my clients. I'm like, you'll just end up right back where you are right now. Right?
Yeah.
Like I live in a lane, and here lanes are circular, right? So you'll just end up right back in front of my house. Might take a while, it might be real quick, I don't know, right? And even if you said it was, sometimes you just want to move to action. All that is a sign is that you might just not be ready to unpack it, and that's fine too. And so, you have to think. I often think about clients because I'm a coach to others, trying to mirror what I hope they will be able to teach themselves through the process. I have to assess if somebody's coachable. I have to meet somebody where they are. So sometimes folks aren't ready to unpack, right? They're good at stage one. Let me just become aware. And then they're like, that's it. I can't do anymore. Okay. So that's where we'll start. There will be plenty of other opportunities because the belief's not going away. So guess what? That we can already track what behavior it leads to. There are going to be other opportunities. Don't you worry. And then at that point, you'll get a chance again to say, okay, what do I want to do now? Do I want to try to go through the process, or do I want to kind of try to, you know, um, sort of, short circuit it, bypass the process, which is fine. You'll just end up right back where you are.
And what I really love about your book, Muriel, is I think so many people are going to be able to pick this up, read it, really get so much out of it, and really kickstart that process, which
Hmm.
no doubt would be, helpful to then continue with a coach to perhaps go deeper into those beliefs. But I think it really just sheds a light for so many of us on what those sort of deeper beliefs might be, and sort of be able to sort of inform us and inspire us then to start to do that work. Because I think particularly, there's a lot of leaders who get a lot of feedback, a lot of 360s, and sort of end up feeling a bit overwhelmed or just sort of jaded with the process, and having a lot of operational things to keep them busy as well. So I
Hmm.
think there's this really there's something, and I don't want to dismiss it by saying it's simple, but I think there's a beautiful simplicity also to these blockers that you've been able to identify that makes
Yeah.
them very resonant for a lot of people. So I think it's a
Mm.
really incredible tool for people to use and take forward with them as leaders, if you've got a coach to work with,
Yeah.
to sort of guide that process.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things there, Sally. I mean, first of all, I'm a sort of simple person, right? Like I need things broken down to me in very simple terms. I
Yeah, love it.
I hear
so
that.
part of it was like, oh my God, it took me years to even figure this stuff out for myself. And then when I got it, I was like, oh, that's it. Okay, like it's pretty simple, right? Not simple to do, but much simpler to understand. So in a way, I kind of wanted to offer that to others. I think secondly is my hope actually is to have folks in a place where they don't necessarily need an external coach to be able to do this work, right? I mean, the two of you actually demonstrated it beautifully today. Like, if you have some shared language and the simple act of being able to say to a colleague, hey, I noticed that you kind of lost your temper in that meeting today, or not even I noticed, like you lost your temper in that meeting today. What's going on? And, the colleague might say, oh, I'm just, so overwhelmed with like all the work we have to do and people aren't getting it right. Da, da, da. The simple question of, well, what's the assumption you're making that's making you feel that way in the meeting? Right. It doesn't have to sound like and I'm not a therapist. This is not therapy, right? Like, it literally is just being curious about the assumptions, about the beliefs, not just going straight to the actions. So I'm hoping that there's language that folks can have with each other. And also, then ultimately, the conversation you can have with yourself, right? Because then it becomes sustainable. You carry it around with you all the time. And it's just a practice. I mean, I'm at a point where I practice this all, like today, I was like really just procrastinating a lot on my work. I just was like, "Okay, Marielle, like, what is it that you're thinking right now that's leading to the procrastination?" Right? And I dug through, and not dug, it took me 5 minutes. And to be honest, I didn't do anything about it. I just was like, okay. Like, I get it now." Right?
Love
What do
it.
I wanna do? You know what? I'm gonna work on this instead of that. But it gives you choice.
It's exactly what I was feeling when you're saying that. It's kind of bringing it back to this point where it's no longer just an automated behavior, and perhaps some self-flagellation going on at the same time
Mhm.
because you're procrastinating, but going, "Oh, I have a choice here and this choice is okay."
That's right. That's right.
Period.
But most of us are action oriented, so we will want to do something about it, right? And so that then helps accelerate it. It helps accelerate it. And I always know when I'm working with someone when they got it, because they start they will bring a situation up and then they'll say, "Oh, I know exactly what you were going to ask me." And I'm like, "Okay, we're done." because it's not about having the answer. It's about asking yourself the right questions that help you then look at the situation and then deal and act on the situation differently than what you have in the past.
It's a powerful point, Muriel, because I think for me, running from having to do the unpack piece was how I spent, most of my young career as a leader. I didn't really want to do the integration work, and I thought that the awareness alone was going to get me there. So it's a really important reminder for all of us that just having the knowledge doesn't drive the behavior change. We have to be brave enough to actually go into the integration work, slow down, choose differently, and sometimes sit with that discomfort until that sort of new habit is formed.
I mean, to be honest, it's like writing a book. I saw the physical copy of my book for the first time the other day, and my partner was with me. He's in the book. Now he's like, "Oh my gosh, why did you put my name in there?" But and he said, "How do you feel?" And I said, it's this weird feeling when you have an idea, which is all kind of just out there, energy in your brain. It's an idea, so it's the awareness. You have an awareness of something, and then you see the physical manifestation of it.
Mm,
But between the idea and the physical manifestation was 3 years of work, right? And work doesn't mean it has to be hard, you know? In fact, my hardest days writing was when I was resisting, when I was telling myself, nobody's going to like this book. Why am I doing this? This doesn't make any sense. Blah, 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 blah. The easiest days of writing when I was just say, just write, just
yeah,
do it, right?
yeah,
Total mindset shift. And
yeah.
so what you're talking, that unpacking stage is the one that everybody wants to skip over because either A, they don't understand the value of it, but more importantly, B, it's like it's hard, it's slowing me down. But I mean, I don't know anyone who goes from idea of a company to the company being hugely successful
Absolutely.
overnight, right?
Yep.
There's a bunch of things that need to happen in between, and the same goes with us as individuals and as leaders.
Muriel, and what's most fascinating about that, if I could add a C, is that that's the phase that doesn't get rewarded externally. No one sees those hard sets and reps. And that's actually the most important part of the journey for the
Yeah.
individual, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we started off this conversation, so we started recording. I was sharing that both my kids just went off to college. And
Yeah.
last night, my partner and I kind of looked at each other and I said, we need to give ourselves a little pat on the back because nobody saw those 18 years, right? So what you're saying, Alexis, is part of adulting is not waiting for the parent or for the adult to come and say, good job, you did the work. Part of adulting is being able to look at yourself and say, yeah, I did that, right? And look where I am. And I can also understand that there were times that I tripped up and I didn't do good. And that's okay because the cumulative effect is what matters, right? And so the being able to internally validate and celebrate yourself around the work that you do over the long term, which never ends, by the way, never ends, it is critical because who else is going to do it for you?
I love that reminder so much, Muriel. I think it's something that, one of my core values is adventure. And it used to be something that I defined as like, hiking to mountaintops and getting those sort of peak moments very externally. But I've realized that some of the most beautiful adventures that I've been on are actually completely invisible to the outside world. They've been entirely internal adventures and, challenges and overcoming them that no one has borne witness to.
That's
But
right.
those have been some of the most in fact, the most valuable, and I think reframing that and understanding that is a really beautiful part of adulting, as you put it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I remember, there was, somebody who I used to hear speak a long time ago, and he would say how folks would always say, "Oh my gosh, I wanna be like you, and I wanna be," because he was pretty significant in the role that he played, and he would always say, "There's no glory without the story."
Yeah.
And what he
Yes.
meant by that is if you actually want to be in my seat today, the way that you're seeing me, you've got to take everything that's come along with it. And that's both the wins and the, not so great days. And so, yes, nobody sees it, but that's where the magic actually happens.
Incredible. Now, we could chat for so long about your incredible new book, Muriel. Thank you so much for being with us on We Are Human Leaders. We'd love to hear from you. And this is perhaps a bit of a macro question, but what do you think a world of unblocked leaders might look like? What is the sort of the ripple effect or the bigger impact of that process when we start to scale?
I mean, look, I think I mentioned earlier, I'm kind of a simple person, right? And we talk a lot about culture and organizational culture and culture at large, et cetera. But when you think about what culture is, it's basically a collective set of beliefs, right? When I think about conflict often happens because there are misaligned beliefs, misaligned different assumptions, or misinterpretation of others' assumptions. And so when I think of this work at a macro level, I fundamentally believe that if we really want to change the way that the world operates, we can't just go straight to, what are we doing? Which is often what happens. We're quick to move. We need to understand what are the beliefs that are at play that have gotten us here, right? So we need to do some unpacking. We need to own them and then take responsibility and say, do we want a different set of beliefs? If what we truly want is peace, or if what we want for our organization is an organization that's intelligent, that provides feedback, an organization that is inclusive, all the things that we tend to see on the values board, right? If we truly want all those things, then what are the beliefs that are actually going to support it? And it needs to start from the leaders. Because if they don't have those beliefs, they cannot expect anybody else to have them as well.
Muriel, such a powerful individual and collective call to action there. And it's one that we hope will inspire leaders to take up the invitation to do this work for themselves. So thank you, Muriel, for being with us on We Are Human Leaders. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. The pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
As human leaders, we're seeking to lead better, live truer, and be the change we want to see in the world. This is how we recreate workplaces and the world into a place where people can flourish and thrive. We're human first and leader second. To learn more about today's guest, find all the details at our show notes at www.wearehumanleaders.com. Thanks for being here with us today, and we'll see you next time.